This is how we do it.
Live in Detroit, this is Guy Gordon on News Talk 760 WJR. This afternoon, Guy is on the 2020 College Tour, sponsored by Wayne State University. Visit wayne.edu. Here's Guy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Very special day here as we begin our WJR College Tour 2020. And as you can imagine, COVID has complicated that as well. So instead of being on the lovely campus at Wayne State University, we are virtually going to be joined by a wonderful roundtable of students. That begins at 4:05. Some fabulous students to give us their insights, both politically, what campus life is like, campus speech, also a critical topic that we'll be covering as well. That's coming up at 4:05. In the meantime, we're going to connect with some of the WSU administrators. I should say right up front that my daughter is a warrior. She was she was a master's candidate and master's graduate just a couple of years ago from the Department of Ed. So we have a little warrior blood in our Gordon veins, and that's a good thing. I am joined by the WSU Provost and Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Laurie Clabo. Dr. Clabo, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Very nice to be with you this afternoon.
We should also point out to our listeners that if they want to have a question for our student roundtable, you can text that to us at 1-800-859-0957, 1-800-859-0WJR. And you can also watch us live on WJR's Facebook page. So we invite you to do that as well, and we can check out your comments there too. Dr. Clabo, we should point out that while we've heard an awful lot about outbreaks, and today another set of bad numbers from the state of Michigan, we're averaging now nearly 1,900 new cases a day. More importantly, we've seen hospitalizations triple. We're nowhere near what our peak was in terms of hospitalizations, but obviously this is still a big concern. But Wayne State, you've been quite successful in keeping the infection rate low. Looking back, what would you point to as the success here?
I think, Guy, there is not one answer to that. We started planning our return to campus in about April, and we've done a number of things. We have a daily screener that folks do on a device, an app that is a CDC-based screener, helps identify who's got symptoms, who shouldn't be on campus on any given day. We have a robust plan of testing, which allows us to identify cases early. And we have all of our campus health center staff certified as contact tracers. So as soon as we see a case, we can start to put people into isolation around who have been significant contacts. And the work of our campus health center has been really, really great at helping us keep those numbers down. You know, today, the positivity rate in the city of Detroit, the percentage of tests that are positive is great. It's 2.4%. On our Wayne State campus today, it's 1.13%.
So, I mean, that's a critical point to make, because we have seen obviously other campuses not be nearly as fortunate as Wayne State has been. That may be in large part to the fact that you're a downtown campus, an urban campus in a city that has done extraordinarily well with mitigation.
And with a city public health department that has been a superb partner with us at all steps along the way, in both helping us set up our initial testing protocol. When we brought students back to campus, particularly our students who live on campus, we tested everyone on move-in day. And we did that in a partnership with the City of Detroit Public Health Department. We each tested half of our students as they moved in. And we have continued to be in touch with them. Anytime we see changes, either positive or negative, they've been a fabulous partner. And I think for Wayne, being not just in the city, but of the city is really, really part of the success story for us.
But you have a unique situation, and it's one that we've watched kind of backlash on the U of M campus and to some degree at Michigan State University, where there have been significant outbreaks. You have a lot of off-campus students. To what extent, why do you think you've been more successful maybe at breaking up social gatherings, or maybe not breaking them up, having them not occur in the first place? Because that's been really the genesis of a lot of the outbreaks at other campuses. And, the narrative going into this was, oh, those college students, they're pretty defiant, they're independent, they're sowing their oats. You're never going to get them to comply with distancing or masks. What's been the reality?
Our students have been a great partner in this process. Our public health committee, which sets public policy, health policy for the university, has student representatives on it. We've been very engaged with our student senate. We've also done some outreach to Greek life, off-campus Greek life. And I think the sense of shared responsibility for the health of our campus is a message we started sending very early, and for us has been very successful. Students, we've had student ambassadors who carry extra masks and hand out masks to people on campus who may have forgotten one. They've really been a part of building a safe community. And look, it's not easy. We are more socially restricted than anyone would have hoped for a fall semester on campus. But we've tried to find ways for students to connect virtually. And, we're doing a lot more outreach, frankly, to students than we would have done in a normal semester. I think everybody wants us to be successful. Our community wants us to be well and healthy. And seeing this as shared responsibility, what I do impacts your health, what you do impacts mine, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it is true. I think everybody wants it. You've actually achieved it, and I think that's a critical difference there. You've got something coming up this Friday, kind of a mental health day, if you will. I hope that you will, Dr. Laurie, sign a note for me so that I can participate in that as well, because I think all of us use it. Talk to me about the stress level on campus. State of Michigan reports that referrals to mental health services are actually down 30%, even though we know that the need is up, that the stress is up. I know at Long Beach State, just one of the schools that happens to be reporting this, they had a 25% increase in crisis referrals on campus. 1 in 3 Americans reporting new or increased mental health symptoms. That kind of underscores what you're doing on Friday. But did you see similar numbers on your campus that precipitated this?
So we heard from students that they were feeling stressed and isolated. And these are from minor annoyances to more serious concerns. So, Zoom fatigue is real. And for students who live their lives largely in online classes, simply the neurocognitive work required to be fully present in an online class is no doubt more than they would have expected in an in-person class. And we're also finding that students are talking about feeling socially isolated, obviously, as a result of the additional restrictions. We at Wayne State heard from students who said, this was, I was doing okay, but now it's week 9 and I'm tired. It's taking a lot more energy than I expected. I have trouble sorting out when to work, when to study, when to find time to take care of myself. And we heard the message pretty clearly that students need a break. And so last week, President Wilson announced that we are declaring Friday the 30th Mental Health Day at Wayne State. Faculty who can will cancel classes. I just came from a meeting of a number of faculty, and one of our faculty members said, I don't teach on Friday. So Thursday, we're having Mental Health Eve, and my class on Thursday evening is canceled. We're going to have very specific programming for students directed at mental health issues, lots of activities, some swag giveaways, a little fun, a time to just reset so they can finish strong.
Well, I hope that those in the business community and maybe the broadcast community as well picks up on that, Dr. Laurie Clabo, because I think that's a healthy step forward. I think everybody's pretty stressed, pretty exhausted, pretty fatigued. Thank you so much, and again, congratulations. I'm going to knock on all kinds of wood here that the success continues. Take care. Thanks
Thank
so much. When we come back, it's a fait accompli. Judge Amy Coney Barrett's going to become Justice Amy Coney Barrett tonight in the U.S. Senate. But what kind of a session is she and the rest of her cohorts on the Supreme Court looking forward to? We're going to get an update from one of our favorite court watchers next on the Guy Gordon Show. Then back with more from Wayne State University here on News Talk 760 WJR. But first, traffic. Rich Lazinski.
WJR Traffic First is sponsored by Marathon. No matter where your travels take you, Marathon can improve your engine performance with quality top-tier gasoline. Marathon, fueling the American spirit. Look out for an accident on I-75 southbound at Grand River Avenue. Oh, man, that's my favorite road. That's blocking your left lane. That accident on I-94 eastbound at Gratiot Avenue is cleared, although we still have residual backups from 11 Mile. And another wreck blocks your right shoulder on the southbound Southfield Freeway just south of Warren Avenue. Now, WJR Weather First from the Weather Channel. Here's your forecast.
Couple of showers possible this afternoon into this evening, otherwise cloudy and chilly. Highs only in the upper 40s to near 50 degrees. Mid-30s tonight, cloudy and chilly again tomorrow, mid-upper 40s. And temperatures remain below average Wednesday. Sunshine, not as cool though, low 50s. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Ken Boone on News Talk 760 WJR.
Okay, guys, coming up, we're going to be hearing from Elizabeth Slattery, who is our favorite go-to person. She used to be with the Heritage Foundation. She's now moved to Pacific Legal, a think tank that leans a little bit to the right, has taken on some almost St. Jude-like hopeless causes, and has prevailed before the Supreme Court. So we're going to get an update from them on several cases that have been added even since the new Supreme Court term started. And the question becomes, of those cases that have already been heard, and they've been very busy, how does Justice Barrett catch up? Or does she? Will they try to decide it with a potential 4-4 split? So we're going to get into that with Elizabeth in just a few minutes. But one in particular, there's a big case from Ford Motor Company, a liability case that may impact some folks there. I don't know that we're going to have time to get into that, but the big one that everybody's watching, of course, is the Affordable Care Act. So, and it's surprising. Yes, it is about the Affordable Care Act. Yes, the Trump administration has asked for the entire act to be thrown out. But that's not really what they're deciding. They're deciding on this kind of more narrow legal concept of severability, asking the question, if a key component of a piece of legislation or statute is removed, does the whole case fall in? Or they've been using the Jenga metaphor here, that if you remove a critical block, does that mean that the whole act collapses and can be and should be thrown out? That's a much different issue than just this notion of complete severability or complete toss out. So we'll get to that in a moment. If you've got comments, we can be checking on them on our Facebook page.
Mark checking in. He's always one of those. He's always one of those stalwarts that always find us when we're doing the StreamYard thing. So thanks for finding us again, Mark.
Yeah, Mark, it's good to have you with us. I saw that. If you got any comments on what we're going to be hearing about here, we sure can do that. Oh my gosh, this is like I just went to the WJR Radio Facebook page, and instead I stumbled upon me and Blaine Fowler dancing from 2 years ago.
Wow.
That's scary.
You don't have that wait, isn't that your desktop background?
That could be. Oh yeah, absolutely. I just have it running. It's kind of like the dancing baby, you know? Yeah, for those of you that didn't see it, you don't want to look. You can't unsee it once you've seen it.
Words don't do it justice, and that's the way we want to keep it.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is there, Guy.
Okay.
Well, that's good, because Guy gave her such a good build-up that
I understand. I'm trying to turn off my there we go. I'm just trying to turn off my Facebook page so I can converse with our listeners.
Do you have your email open?
I do.
Is it silenced?
How do I do that?
Well, one way is to close it out, but two, probably settings.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. Why did it? I didn't. I thought that was hers, not mine, honestly.
I don't know, but I don't really want to take any risks.
We'll find out.
Because I'm going to be emailing you during the show.
Everyone sent Guy an email. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Okay, Elizabeth is there. That's good news. And
Yes.
How close are we to being back?
23 seconds. So Laura and I will go bye-bye for a second, and we'll be back in 15.
Okay.
The stories that have been breaking while you've been at work. 760 WJR, where Detroit comes to talk.
We welcome you back in. We'll be returning to our friends at Wayne State University in just a moment, but tonight, sometime around 7:30, they tell us, there will be a critical vote in the Senate to confirm the nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett to become Justice Amy Coney Barrett, replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And with all of the drama that has been surrounding that, what's kind of got lost in it is some of the critical cases that are going to be decided in this next session, some of which have already started, which begs the question, can you hit rewind so that Justice Barrett can participate in those cases? Our favorite legal eagle is and court watcher is at the end of our line this afternoon. Elizabeth Slattery is a senior legal fellow and deputy director of the Pacific Legal Foundation Center for the Separation of Powers. And Elizabeth, it's nice to connect with you, and I love where you landed.
Thanks so much for having me.
So looking at this right now, with a new justice joining, and we're already out of the gate, obviously the big case that everybody's watching, I think, comes up on November 10th, which is the Affordable Care Act. Off camera, while we were talking to our friends that are watching on Facebook right now, I was trying to explain that this really isn't to decide thumbs up or thumbs down on the ACA. It's a legal concept of severability. Explain what that means and what the likelihood is that ACA will be completely tossed.
Yeah, so the issue before the Supreme Court this time around, and of course this is the seventh case stemming from Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, to reach the Supreme Court, is whether the individual mandate, the mandate that everyone has to buy health insurance, is still constitutional as a tax. The court, when it heard the case back in 2011, upheld it as a lawful exercise of Congress's taxing authority. But in 2017, Congress set the amount of the tax at zero. So is it still a tax if it isn't actually raising any revenue? So that's one of the issues there. Is it still a constitutional exercise of Congress's taxing power? And if the court finds that it is unconstitutional, they will then have to decide if that portion of the mandate can be severed from the rest of the underlying statute of the Affordable Care Act. Now, oftentimes, I mean, this is an issue that comes up. You know, there were two decided just in June where the court was able to sever part of a statute rather than ruling the entire thing to come down. And so it's something that they deal with very often, but you know, I don't like to predict what the court's going to do, but it seems unlikely to me that even if they find the mandate is unconstitutional, that the entire law is going to come down.
So for our listeners, is the legal Jenga metaphor apt here? The idea that if you pull out one part of a law, whether the whole thing collapses, is that a good mental picture to have regarding that case?
You know, that is one way to look at it. And, you know, the Obama administration argued when the mandate and then the law was first enacted that it had these three parts, and the mandate was one of the three essential parts, and that the law could not operate without it. But the law has been operating for the last 3 years without an actual mandate because people are not actually being taxed if they don't purchase health insurance.
Yeah, and for those of you that have never played Jenga, meet me at Hopcat at 5:30, and I'll explain the whole thing to you. In terms of, there have been two cases added to the docket since Judge Barrett's confirmation hearings, both of them really cornerstones for the Trump immigration policy, one having the stay in Mexico policy tested, the other whether or not the border wall can be funded with Pentagon funds. Just give us a brief synopsis of those and how critical they are, and whether or not you really think they'll be heard this session or they've just been thrown into the hopper.
Yeah, so those I don't know if the court has announced a date for the argument in those cases. So they would certainly come after if Judge Barrett is in fact confirmed tonight. She would be on the court in time to hear them, most likely sometime in in the spring. But I think it kind of shows a broader trend, which is that so many policies that the Trump administration has attempted to enact have ended up being challenged in court. And, oftentimes we see district courts that are entering these nationwide injunctions, beyond the scope of their actual authority. And so that's an issue that a number of the justices have been interested in exploring, and that has certainly come up in the immigration context. If we go back a couple of terms to the travel ban case and to the census case and on to others.
Right. Conservatives obviously very excited with the arrival of Justice Barrett, and especially this idea of a 6-3 split now on the Supreme Court. Can she be a participant in the cases that have already seen oral arguments, and how would that happen?
So most likely she will not be participating in any of the cases. That I think about a dozen cases that the court already heard earlier in October. Now, when Justice Kavanaugh was confirmed, the court had heard a week or so of argument, and they actually ended up rescheduling 2 of those cases for a re-argument after Kavanaugh was seated. And I think the implication there is that the court was concerned that without a ninth justice that they were not able to reach a majority, and they didn't want to end up tying in those instances. If we go back a little bit farther in history and we look at the term when Justice Scalia passed away, there were really only a handful of cases when they had 8 justices where they were tied. And so, I think for the most part, the cases that have already been argued this term, Judge Barrett would most likely not be participating in any of those unless they really can't come to an agreement and they're very concerned about being tied on the issue.
And is it just me? We've got, by my count now, and perhaps mine is outdated, 41 cases that are going to be heard or are due to be heard in this term, because we had 12 that slopped over from the past term due to COVID. Is this one of the most consequential sessions that we've seen in a long time, or does it just seem that way?
I think in recent years it has really seemed like every term is one for the history books, as SCOTUS court watchers will say. But they're actually, they have plenty of space in their docket to add more cases. Back in the 1980s, for example, they used to hear 150 cases a term, and now they're down to about 70 or so each term. And so they do have plenty of space still to add to their docket. So we'll see what they come up with.
All right. Very good. Elizabeth Slattery, it is always a pleasure. We look forward to talking with you as some of these cases come due and as oral arguments begin. And maybe that will come as soon as November 10th when we hear the oral arguments on ACA. And it's going to be interesting. And we know that you know how to explain it to us, so we actually understand it, and we appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Elizabeth Slattery from the Pacific Legal Foundation. That's a great webpage, by the way. If you like to nerd out like I do on these cases, they take up some fascinating cases on behalf of conservative causes, and I think you'll enjoy a visit to their website. When we come back, we're going to be talking about free speech on campus. It seems like every other day we have some speaker being disinvited or shouted down or being asked to leave, that their perspective is not wanted. Does that really reflect the attitudes on the broader American campus? There's some interesting and perhaps what you might find encouraging results on that. We're going to talk about it with one of the members of the philosophy department at Wayne State University who specializes in this. We'll get to that next on The Guy Gordon Show. But first, Rich Lauzon, WJR Traffic. All right, gang.
WJR Traffic First is also sponsored by the Carpenters Labor Management Partnership Team. Make a career change today and join the skilled trades. The Carpenters LMPT contractors are looking for professional, hardworking individuals that want to build a career.
Welcome in, Jerry. Good to have you with us. Oh, dear. Oh, there. Now I've got it punched up here.
What'd you do?
Okay. I was looking at Facebook and the delay it was mind bending. It was.
I'm talking to Guy, Mike.
It just freaked me out for a moment.
Oh.
So, and interesting for those of us that are just hanging out, I may bring this up a little bit later too, but a really interesting note just came through. The question has been asked, and we see the governor again and again, almost to the point of nausea, as well as other health leaders talk about washing your hands and wearing your mask and all the COVID mitigation strategies that we all, think that we know, and it becomes a little tiresome to hear them again and again. And you wonder, geez, are they doing it because they think we've forgotten or we didn't know to begin with or people haven't been listening? There's a new study that came out. This is from the Michigan Health and Hospital Association. Congratulations, Michigan. 91% of you know that you need to do all three of those things.
How do they poll that?
They polled it just last week. They went to 600 voters. Epic MRA, our friend Bernie Porn at Epic MRA did the study for them. And just ask folks, can you recite the three things that you need to do to stop COVID from spreading? And everybody knew what they have to do. Some of the other findings, 79% of voters agree that their local hospital has played a critical role in their community fight, so there's an understanding and appreciation for what they've done. In terms of mask wearing, there was something in here about that.
Oh, I muted you, Mike, for a minute while Mike was.
Oh,
I don't know if it's a matter of knowing what to do. It's a matter of being willing to do it.
Well, and being disciplined about it. So here's something else. This is 600. That's a pretty good sample for a survey. 37% of voters said they would definitely or probably get the vaccine as soon as one is available. That's less than 4 out of 10. That's like only one out of 3 saying that they would get it.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people, I kind of look at myself. I would take the vaccine, but I would wait because it's been rushed through, and so you still feel like a bit of a guinea pig.
So basically, Mike, you're going to let old farts like me be the guinea pig here. You're going to wait to see what the side effects are in the vulnerable populations, and then decide whether or not you're going to get it.
Well, I'm not going to hold a gun to your head and make you get it, but if you want to volunteer, then that's fine by me.
Okay, not to diminish the study, but what do they think the answer would be if you were to say, how do you stop spreading germs? Rather than asking how to stop spreading COVID, wouldn't the answer probably still be the same?
So it's interesting. Here was the quote on it. 85% of Michigan voters feel comfortable visiting a healthcare facility for routine checkups. That's a huge shift, which is great. So this was the quote from the MHA. Michigan voters clearly understand that wearing masks, physically distancing when necessary, and taking other personal safety precautions will help our state's hospitals and frontline healthcare workers. The message from this survey is clear. We need more Michigan residents to take responsibility and exercise the behaviors. So ignorance is no defense, I guess, is what they're trying to say. Everybody knows what they have to do. It's just that we're not doing it as well as we could. I actually think a lot of it is just the fact that we've all moved indoors, and it's just going to happen.
Well, I think people are. I think what do they call it? COVID fatigue, where I think a lot of people are lulled into a sense of security that if they haven't gotten it yet, they're not going to, and since it's not constantly top of mind, you might just revert back into old habits.
I think that has a lot to do with it. But 35%, Michael, fall into your category, which is I will take the vaccine, but I'm going to wait to take it to see how other parts of the population weather it. And then there is another 25% that say they would probably or definitely not get the vaccine. So what's that? 25, 60%.
Remember those percentages you talked about the other day, Mike?
Yeah. So only 3% undecided.
I forgot all about them.
What was that?
I was making fun of you when you were bragging about your percentages the other day, and you were struggling there with that one.
I don't struggle. I can calculate those in my head.
Yeah, you can. It just wasn't as fast as you were the other day.
No.
If you're going to brag about it, you better be good.
Well, no, I was just adding the percentages to see if it added up to 100. I wanted to know how many undecideds there were.
Well, to be fair, he was only bragging with us. He wasn't bragging to the
That's true. I was
StreamYard
bragging to somebody
community.
else.
I know, but I call Guy out. That's part of my.
Aloha to Emily Gale, listening to us way out in the lovely islands of Hawaii. You must be up pretty early. Or I guess only, what's what?
Be like noon.
Yeah.
Ish. We're about a minute
maybe?
away. Let's just check in with John Corvino here. Make sure he sounds good. Mr. Corvino, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Sounds good. All right. We're 45 seconds away, so all of us but Guy will go away, and you guys have the floor.
Great. Thank you.
Not hearing.
Yeah, I just said to Laura, I probably had us go backstage a little early because, like I said, you won't hear the commercials because we don't put them over this. So next time we'll go with just 15 seconds so you're not out there on an island.
Yeah, I just couldn't hear that. But I will hear program audio once you hit the music
right
button,
now.
Okay.
Welcome back to more Guy Gordon on WJR. Today, Guy is sponsored by Wayne State University. Once again on his 2020 college tour, here's Guy.
And we invite you to join us on WJR's Facebook page if you want to watch us live as well as listen. And if you're listening to us on the radio, normally when we start our WJR college tour, we'd be on campus. Obviously, COVID has denied us that privilege, but we're joining everybody virtually today and getting the latest on what's happening on campus. We've heard about how successful Wayne State has been in mitigating COVID, not suffering through these big outbreaks like a lot of campuses. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Detroit's doing a great job in general and that this is an urban campus. But we also wanted to talk about what has really been a nagging topic and concern on college campuses, and that is balancing the desire to keep hate speech out of the forum, but also making sure that diverse political speech is still nurtured and that opposing viewpoints and sometimes controversial viewpoints are still heard. We welcome in Dr. John Corvino, a Wayne State University Irvin D. Reid Honors College professor of philosophy who has been struggling with trying to find this balance both on the Wayne State campus and watching others do it as well. Dr. Corvino, great to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
There is this persistent narrative, and I've heard it from listeners. We've seen it in some conservative media that the campus environment now, they're all snowflakes. Nobody wants to hear an opposing viewpoint. They all hate conservatives. And yet I've seen studies that actually show the opposite. So kind of help us understand what the real environment is versus what the media has been projecting.
Sure. Well, I think part of the issue is when we talk about the real environment. I mean, campuses are different, and different campuses have handled this in different ways. We're an urban campus that's quite diverse, and we're diverse ethnically, we're diverse racially, we're diverse religiously, and we're diverse politically. And I think that combined with a kind of Detroit keep it real spirit, if you will, has enabled us at Wayne State at least to have these kinds of conversations productively. Certainly there have been cases on campuses where cancel culture, as sometimes people refer to it, has seemed to be particularly strong. But I think that it's easy to look at a few of those cases where there have been strident reactions to speakers and so on, and to think all campuses are like that. And that's just not the reality.
Well, in fact, I think UCLA's Higher Education Research Institute did a survey and found that 2/3 of their student body, this was first years, so a very impressionable group, came online and said no, they want to have dissent, they want to have controversial opinions, they want to hear it all and make up their own mind. And yet we have these persistent stories of squeaky wheels, in some cases getting some speakers expelled from campus. Is this one of those situations where a very vocal minority is trumping a larger silent majority on campus?
I think that's a big part of it. I also think that the study you point to indicates something that's important for us to underscore, which is that campuses are special places. We are places where we try to carve out a space for the free exchange of ideas. And that kind of space is increasingly hard to come by. I think especially hard to come by when we're in the middle of a pandemic and most of our interaction is virtual, because a lot of political debate then ends up happening on social media, which tends to stamp out nuance, which tends to encourage tribalism, which tends to at times bring out the worst in people. We have fewer opportunities for the kind of thoughtful give and take, for the kind of creating a space of trust where people can actually get to know each other and learn. And so I think we have a really important responsibility on college campuses to create and preserve and enhance that kind of space.
One of the studies that I saw was very clear in looking at how safe young people felt on campus expressing their political views. And it was interesting. It didn't matter whether they called themselves liberal, moderate, or conservative. Over 70% said they feared speaking their own minds on some political questions for fear of retribution from peers. And the difference between liberals and conservatives was about 13 percentage points. So conservatives felt a little bit more vulnerable and endangered, but still that's an awfully high number for all of them.
Right. And I think that that's probably not unique to college campuses. I think it's a more general indication of how polarized the country has become and how polarized the world has become on these controversial issues, partly because we have fewer spaces in which to express ourselves in these relationships of trust, partly because, again, and I don't mean to pick on social media because I use social media, but social media tends to exacerbate the kind of heightened emotions that make people afraid in the way you just described.
So what is the barometer on Wayne State's campus? Maybe you've got a campus group that wants to invite in Yanis Giannopoulos or somebody like that, who is a far-right figure. The cancel culture would say, well, that's hate speech. You can't allow that on campus. I feel threatened by that. How do you make that call, and who plays referee on your campus?
So, I mean, it varies, depending on the department or school or college. I mean, certainly there are protocols for inviting speakers to campus. And I think one of the important distinctions to make here, when people talk about cancel culture, there's a difference between inviting somebody to campus through due channels and then having that person disinvited, and that has happened at various places, and a situation where we just decide, you know what, this person doesn't really belong on campus because they're not part of promoting the kind of thoughtful discussion that does in fact encourage a free exchange of ideas. But on our campus, I think, again, going back to that sort of Detroit grit I was talking to you about earlier, I think it's the case that students on our campus, when they hear views that they disagree with, they will tell you that they disagree with them, and they will tell you that quite directly and forcefully, and then they're going to move on with their lives because they have things to do. They're busy people. Yeah. So I think that's a healthy culture, and I appreciate being part of that.
That's terrific. And, we'll talk with them about it because coming up at 4:05, we're going to have a group of 4 Wayne State students, also Wayne State law students from both sides of the political spectrum, to kind of talk about this and find out from their perspective if they feel safe talking about some of the more controversial topics on campus. Dr. Corvino, thank you so much. We sure appreciate your time and your dedication to finding that right balance on your campus.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care. When we come back, we saw the most amazing Lions game this weekend. We'll check in with Lomas and talk that before we get to our students at 4:05. That's next on The Guy Gordon Show. Here's Rich Lazinski to see if you got clear sailing on the freeways.
WJR Traffic First is also sponsored by Marathon. No matter where your travels take you, Marathon can improve your engine performance with quality top-tier gasoline. Marathon, fueling the American spirit. Expect delays on I-75 northbound between I-696 and 11 Mile. Also on I-94 eastbound between 11 and 12 Mile. We also have slow traffic on I-94 westbound between the Lodge and 14th Street. And the I-94 westbound ramp to M10 northbound is closed for construction until early November. Now, WJR Weather First from the Weather Channel, sponsored by by the Mechanical Contractors Association of Detroit. When your commercial, industrial, public, or residential project calls for plumbers, pipe fitters, or HVAC service technicians, the Mechanical Contractors Association of Detroit connects you with the very best, highly skilled and trained union contractors. To get started on your next project, visit mcadetroit.org. Here's your forecast.
Cloudy and rather chilly out here this afternoon. Slight chance for a shower into this evening. Highs in the upper 40s to near 50 degrees. Mid-30s overnight. Cloudy tomorrow, mid-upper 40s. Sunshine, low 50s Wednesday. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Ken Boone on News Talk 760 WJR.
Hey, Guy.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I forgot. This is where we're supposed to do our perna. Can we get that read in real quick after the spot?
Yes, we can.
We're 15 seconds away. I'll just point to you since you can't hear it, okay?
Okay, let me get my laptop in front of you.
Okay. Perna? Yeah, hold on.
Are you worried about how long it's going to take to sell your home, or even if it's going to sell at all? Let Michael Perna's team help you out. Take Don and Barb. They'd lived in Bloomfield Township for years, but when those stairs became a little bit too much for Barb to handle, they decided to move on. So they called Michael, and he used aggressive marketing strategies to sell their home, and they did it within 3 weeks. That is peace of mind, folks. Don and Barb, they had already purchased a new home, so the stress of 2 mortgages, well, that ended abruptly thanks to Michael. After having their home on the market for 9 months with another agent, they really learned how magical Michael can be, and they got top dollar. So what I'm telling you here, Michael Perna is the only one to call when you need to sell your home. He's with Keller Williams Realty, and you know what I've been telling you. He guarantees to sell your home at a price and a deadline that you agree to up front, or he will buy it. Now, I know Michael Perna. I know his team. They are people that you can trust to get your home sold quickly and for top dollar. They sell 3 times faster than the market average, an incredible average of just 17 days. So do yourself and your home and your pocketbook a favor. Call Michael Perna at 844-737-6276 or go online at thepernateam.com and start packing.
Okay, 2.5 away. Do we want to come in with the touchdown pass to Hawkinson, or do you want to call
No. Come in with the TJ live mic stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You may want to set that up because it's not super intelligible. I mean, if you know what it is, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so you know what? I will set it up, and we'll do it again on the backside, but then how long is Miller's call?
I got it down to 30.
Oh, terrific. That's fine.
Okay, so do you want to come in with that, or do you want to set me up for that as well?
No, come in with Dan's call, and then we'll I'll set up Lomas for this.
Okay. And Lomas is there. Hey, Lomas, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Hey, I'm here.
All right,
Here's the man.
How you doing, Guy?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
I see that you are about as conscientious as I am with the background that we're using for this. I gotta clean up this office.
I know, same here, man. My wife would kill me right now, man, if she knew what was going on behind me. Oh, you're right. Oh, I didn't see the clothes. Hang on, let me get the clothes.
No, it's okay. Let me hang some laundry, and we'll be equal then.
At least that's not underwear.
I know, but there's some underwear down low, though.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Just keep the camera up.
Yeah. Oh my God, I might get killed about that. I might have to do it like this.
Yeah.
Hi, friends. This is Lomas Brown, and when my wife makes me sleep on the couch, I shop at Gordon Furniture.
You're right.
Oh man.
That's funny. Yeah.
Now we're back in 30 here, guys.
So you must have had fun yesterday.
Oh,
those games are great.
It was a blast, man. I'm glad somebody else was on the other end of that shoe. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been on that far too many times, man.
Back to 15 here, guys.
Well, we'll talk about this to a degree. I mean, it was familiar territory for us, and we were resting heavy on that defense. So.
The Guy Gordon Show, 760.
From the Falcon 11-yard line, down by 6, final play of the game. Stafford empty out of the gun. He's got it back. Looks, pumps once, steps up, looks, throws, end zone.
Yes!
Carr!
Yes!
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! TJ Hawkinson!
Yes!
They did it! They've tied it! They're an extra point away from winning this game! Oh, baby, how big is that?
Yes,
How
that's huge.
big is that? Matthew Stafford magic.
Yeah, it was. I just got chills all over again.
Oh my
that's
goodness.
an incredible. Lomas Brown has now picked himself up off the broadcast floor booth and joins us live here on WJR, the color commentator for Detroit Lions Radio. That had to be so much fun to call.
Man, Guy, all I could say was yes. Yes, that's all I could say. I just had to let Dan's call just marinate because, man, he is so great in those moments. So I just let him have that moment. And, man, it was awesome to be on that end instead of us being the victims. I'm glad we victimized somebody else.
Well, and because it wasn't a home game, it wasn't like you could rely on the cheers from the stands to carry that moment either. I want you to listen to no, a lot of folks don't know TJ Hawkinson was wearing a mic when he caught that ball. So I want to give you a sample of what it was like from TJ's perspective to catch. I mean, this guy in his second year. He only had an average rookie season, and he caught a game winner. This was TJ's perspective. Oh, now you've had experiences like that. You know the energy that came from that game.
Yes.
How long will that linger for this team? I know you always look ahead to the next game. You can't look in the rear view. But how important is that?
Well, first of all, I'm glad TJ was able to keep it PG at that moment because, man, that was some excitement. But, man, God, I just hope they could just carry this momentum. I mean, think about it. A come-from-behind victory, a good sound victory over a Jacksonville team. Now a come-from-behind victory over an Atlanta team. That has to bode well for you. Tough team coming in that we're facing in Indianapolis. But if I'm in that locker room, my confidence is so high right now and things are just good right now with the Lions. So they just got to make sure they keep it going. And the way they do that, they got to stay consistent, guy. They can't get too big and they can't get too low. They just got to still stay consistent.
The one thing, Lomas, that, you'll have to forgive me. I did text my son after the Lions got their score before that one and said, oh, geez, 3 minutes to go with a Lions lead. What could possibly go wrong? And I think we've all had those thoughts. And the defense didn't hold. I mean, they did allow the Falcons to go back in the lead. That is something, come from behinds can't always happen. So what do we need to do to get the right chemistry and the right mix on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, so again, the offense could help them by really just concentrating and really when they get in the red zone, trying to put up 7 points instead of 3 points. I think that's the biggest thing that the offense could do for our defense. But, for the defense, they just got to get off the field, one. So third down conversions, you got to be able to get the opposing offense off the field on third down. And then the other thing is penalties. Those are things that have been helping the other team against our defense as we've been getting penalties, whether it's PI or personal fouls or whatever. Those penalties have been untimely. The time that they have happened have been untimely for us, and this really cost the Lions. So I'm not saying that the Lions are a really penalized team, but when the penalties happen for the Lions, they're normally at crucial times, and they normally come back to really, really hurt the team. So that's the biggest thing I see on the defensive side of the ball.
I got to tell you, there was that one point that it was, I think, 4th and 5 in the fourth quarter, and Matt Ryan went for it. And Trey Flowers, he was big play Trey for that
Yes.
moment. And those are the kinds of things that we need to see more of.
Absolutely, from Trey. And I'm telling you who I was really proud of was Romeo Okoye, because he showed, 2 sacks, a forced fumble. He was really there. And so with him and Trey on the outsides, that could be a dynamic force. So, yes, Trey, he had a heck of a game, especially knocking down that pass, the conversion. He was just all over the field. And that's what you need. And that's what we were hoping for, guys, especially when you got guys from New England like a Trey Flowers, like a Jamie Collins II, like a Deron Harmon. Those guys know this system. So we expected these guys to come in this system and thrive. And that's what we're seeing. Danny Shelton, John Penasini, Nick Williams, those guys in the middle of that defensive line, they were huge this weekend.
There was a lot of chirping this past week about some social media comments that Kenny Golladay put up, basically saying, after a game like that, y'all are going to have to pay up big time. It was kind of unprofessional. I didn't like it. But I got to tell you, after watching him again this week, the Lions should lock this guy up. Does that kind of end the conversation that they need to sew this up quickly?
God, we can't lose any more good players. Think about the players that have walked out the door or that have left the organization either under their own will or against their will. Think about the players we lost. So if you got a guy like a Kenny Golladay, to me, you can't afford to lose another guy that's been here, who's been with Matthew Stafford. He seems to be Matthew's security blanket, because I'm telling you, anytime Matthew gets in trouble and he just throws the ball, all he needs to do is throw it up towards number 19, and he know more than half of the time, 19 is coming down with the ball. So you got to keep a weapon like him.
All right, I got to let you go, but real quickly before you leave, there was questions last week about Matt Prater's toe and maybe his head. Did his performance yesterday kind of end that conversation? He did miss one from like 47, but then in the pressure moment,
that's right,
they take a penalty and move him back, and he still nails it.
And I said off air, I didn't care about that penalty. I did care about it, the Danny Amendola penalty, because it backed him up. But I knew Matt was good, man. My little homeboy, Matt Prater, he is the man.
All right. Well, he had ice in his veins yesterday. We'll hope for good luck against the Colts. Lomas, it was fun experiencing it with you. Take care, my friend.
You too, guy. Take care.
All right. Lomas Brown, when we come back, going to be talking to our roundtable at Wayne State University. In the meantime, let's get to Rich Lazinski, WJR Traffic.
WJR Traffic First is also sponsored by Reamer Floors. National Keristan Month is happening now at Reamer Floors. Lowest prices of the season, 36-month financing, and an instant rebate up to $1,000 on Keristan carpet, hardwood, and luxury vinyl floors. Visit ReamerFloors.com to schedule your shop at home or in-store appointments. We have a disabled vehicle on I-94 eastbound at Division Road. Expect delays on I-75 northbound between I-696 and 11 Mile. Construction slows you down on the northbound Southfield Freeway between Oakwood Boulevard and Michigan Avenue. And we also have a wealth of construction on I-75 northbound between 7 Mile and Adams Road. And the I-94 westbound route to M10 northbound is closed for construction until early November. Now WJR weather first from the Weather Channel. Cloudy, 49 degrees. I'm Rich Luzinski, WJR News in 2 minutes.
So, Guy, take this comment any way you want. Ron says, you look just like your voice.
I replied to him, and I said I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, he kind of looks like an old goat. Look at that gray hair. He's wearing glasses. Yeah.
I'm always so curious, and obviously people saw you on TV before they heard you on the radio, but I'm always so curious as to what people think we look like if they've only heard our voices on the radio.
Well, you know, the comment you get most often when you meet people in person is they say, you look so much better in person, which is like, well, that's nice, except I make my living on TV, and I don't think I look that great in person. So God help me what I look like on the air.
I just figure you have to be super overly attractive in person for it to kind of come across on TV.
Yeah, no, thank goodness I had credibility because I didn't have the other.
All right, so to our roundtable folks, we'll be with you in just a second. We'll test our mics out. Once I get into news, I'll start bringing them up.
Okay.
We're about 35 seconds away from that. All right, 10 seconds will be in news. Then it looks like we've got Max, Will, and James with us. So we'll be with you guys and test your mics in just a moment here.
WJR Detroit. And
all right, let's see. Hi, James. Thanks for being with us. Can you hear us, and can we hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound very good. I'm going to leave you up because I want to hear how we all kind of sound together. Max, can you hear us, and can we hear you?
I'm here as well. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, there's a little delay, but that'll take care of itself as we buffer. Okay.
Oh, Max, you're killing me. I should have worn a tie now. This is not even fair.
I was thinking that. The good news is no
Will, how
belt
you
or
doing?
shoes. So
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, I'm barefoot, so I guess we're all. We were just talking to Lomas Brown. He had his laundry hanging on a line behind him. It was it was like the color commentator for the Detroit Lions. It's like, dude had some ironing to do.
Well, that's why I didn't go to the close-up shot of him. I wanted to make sure his laundry was hidden. Allison, how you doing? Can you hear us, and can we hear you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah,
sound great.
Everyone sounds great. Oh, good. This is the part I was nervous about, but I figured, you're all tech-savvy college kids, so.
So the bios you guys send in are like memoirs, and I appreciate that. But we will paraphrase them if that's okay.
Go for it.
All right.
And Guy, I know we talked about this, and I believe you all were let know this, that we're going to ask when we're talking, if you guys have anything you want to communicate with us or comment on Guy, we're going to ask you to put your hand up or raise your finger so that we're not talking over each other.
Sure.
And so you guys don't miss being in class.
JJ, you already got a shout out from Phil Patterson.
Thanks. Can he hear me right now?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, hey, Phil.
So interesting times. I do want to, if you guys want to think about it, just give me your sense of what it's like at Wayne Law these days. And also, if you can, because none of you are underclassmen, I mean, do any of you interact with underclassmen on a regular basis, either virtually or otherwise?
Not really. Not
you
me.
Allison?
Yeah, I can. So I think it's a little hard to know what's going on campus because I don't think any of us have been in a while. But I will say that I've talked to a couple of underclassmen, so like incoming law students. I've been trying to reach out because I know that 1L is a really tough year, and I can't imagine trying to make it through your very first year of law school and also without the supportive peers to guide you through that. And I know people are struggling. So,
yeah. I wanted to kind of make sure, just in a general sense, to tap in on just this idea that these are highly unusual times to be a student, either undergrad or grad, and kind of what you all are experiencing from that end. And we were talking with Dr. Clabo, the provost, about this mental health day that's coming up on Friday, and the fact that there is a lot of stress to this that probably folks don't realize, that virtual isn't easier, it isn't less stressful. Maybe it saves you the traffic of driving into campus from wherever you live, but it's still tough.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but I know that my life has a lot of moving parts. So you have to deal with those moving parts a little bit more when you're around said moving parts a little bit more. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely looking forward to the mental health day. Thinking about ways to relax, thinking about ways to take care of myself mentally, emotionally, especially as the pandemic's going on, and then life outside the pandemic is still moving. And law school is stressful in and of itself, minus the pandemic. So
now, just by a show of hands, how many of you live near campus in Detroit, or all of you off campus?
I did. I've since we went online, I actually moved back over to Ann Arbor, so a little change in that. But I had been near campus for the past 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I can only imagine that a lot of those fun things that you normally would have participated in, maybe by being on campus, have changed. All right, here we go.
Yeah, we're back in 15, so I'm going to put everyone backstage, and I'll bring you all, and I'll keep you all up so that we can see who has their finger up and everything. Yeah.
Live in Detroit, this is Guy Gordon on News Talk 760 WJR. This afternoon, Guy is on the 2020 College Tour, sponsored by Wayne State University. Visit wayne.edu. Here's Guy.
Good to have you with us, and welcome back in as we continue our WJR College Tour. Our first stop, as you heard there, Wayne State University. This is a great time to do this because we're 8 days out from a general election, a very consequential election. In 2016, only 46% of voters aged 18 to 29 participated in the election. That's against 71%, for instance, for those over 65. And we have seen again and again both parties playing very hard to the younger voter, only to be kind of disappointed come election day because, to some extent, they're not unreliable, but there's this perception of maybe apathy, or they're just not pleased with their choices. We're going to try to tap into all of that today as we meet the four members of our Wayne State University Roundtable. We welcome in Max Short, who is president of the Wayne Law Chapter of the Federalist Society. Max, good to have you with us. Will Broman is also a member of the Federalist Society and a symposium editor with Wayne Law Review. Allison Putt is president of the Wayne Law Chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union. And we're joined by James Johnson, also known as JJ. He's a native Detroiter, Inkster High School, and also, I think, third-year law. Is that correct, JJ?
Yep, that's
all right.
right.
Welcome to all of you. All of you are grad students and are at the law school, and we appreciate having a learned bunch here. Just in terms of life, going to school, especially something as rigorous as law school, in a virtual sense, how has it been? Allison, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go ahead and assume you mean in the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's crazy enough being in law school when you're not in a pandemic, but how has the virtual component and the stress of that changed life for you in terms of moving forward with your legal career?
Yeah, so I think in the broad scope, it hasn't changed a lot for me. And I mean that because I was always going to go to law school. This was going to be a confined period of my life. And then I was going to move on and take my degree to do other things with it. The way in which I did that did radically change. I'm fortunate enough that my husband and I own our own home. So when we had moved in before I started law school, this is actually my office. And I had spent some time over a year ago sort of making this my space. So I've actually been very comfortable, although I I was joking before coming on air that I was a little worried about being seen live because I think the only people who have seen me in the last 7 months have been my husband and my classmates. So I feel a little rusty.
Yeah, well, I think all of us kind of suffer from that a little bit. We've all got a case of COVID face and maybe COVID waistline as well. Max, from your perspective, in terms of the virtual component of learning, do you feel like you're progressing at the same rate, learning as much as you would have otherwise, as you did maybe in earlier iterations of your legal pursuits?
Yes, I think to some degree, it's a lot of similar stuff to what we had been doing before the pandemic. I was actually very impressed with the way Wayne State kind of transitioned us to online learning last year, when the pandemic kind of set in, when the lockdowns were going on. I thought they did really a fantastic job of not skipping a beat and keeping things moving. So, to your question of learning, I still feel like it is, a very good learning experience. I think some of the small class sizes maybe help with some of that stuff. And, speaking as a 3L, it's certainly a lot different than for some of our first year students this year.
JJ, in terms of being a 3L, we don't have a lot of extracurricular stuff. Are you still finding the outside engagement that you need just in terms of student life? And looking ahead, are you going to be having the same internships, the same mentorship opportunities in this still very uncertain COVID era?
Sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, that's for you, JJ. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think my internet cut out a little bit. But yeah, I think that in terms of mentorship and internship opportunities, I think that just the legal community in Detroit and, just with the Wayne Law community, the Wayne Law alums, I think they make themselves available, and everybody knows that there's a pandemic going on. And so people are being much more intentional about showing care, showing compassion for one another, reaching out, checking in, seeing how things are going. And also just, let me know if you need anything. I hear that a lot. And that's really encouraging for me because, virtual learning has been a tough experience.
In what way?
Yeah, well, there's tons of distractions at home. You got kids, you got family, you got things going on outside the house, people coming in. You got like my partner who is also working from home, and we have concurrent Zoom calls, and it's just tons of things to worry about. And but going back to what Max said, I think that Wayne State, Wayne Law has done a remarkable job of just making sure that we have access to the resources we need to access the online learning, and just have access to the professors, have access to counseling services and stuff like that.
Will, before we came on Hot, we were backstage a little bit and talking about this mental health day, and we talked to Dr. Clabo about it. That's coming up on Friday. I don't know how much you intersect with the undergrad community, but how are they doing and how are you doing just in terms of the stress level and the sense of isolation that comes with some of this?
Yeah, I think that with the undergrads, I definitely interact less with Wayne undergrads than I do with my GW alumni and GW undergrads. But as far as the isolation, I don't particularly mind it. I get to go see my parents every day at lunch. They live 5 minutes away. And that's been the most interaction I've had with my parents during law school. I'm a fourth year part-time law student. So in the last 3 years, my interactions with my parents during the week have been limited, and getting to see them every single day has been enormously helpful. And I just cherish every moment of it.
And you don't have to hear the line, "You never call."
No, I walk in and they're like, "Oh, you're back again. This is the third time today."
Well, coming up, I want you to all put your political caps on a moment. We talked a little bit about the fact that the voters in your age group can be notoriously unreliable, at least from the perspective of political parties that try to get you to the polls. What is it about that, the voting when you're in school, that makes it so difficult, inconvenient? And what do you think of the current crop of candidates? Is there an apathy and an enthusiasm issue? We want to get to that with our young people on the Wayne State College campus, Wayne State University campus. First, I got to check in with Rich Lazinski, WJR Traffic First. Back with our roundtable in a moment.
WJR Traffic First is sponsored by Shelving.com. Michigan family business Shelving.com turned 60 this month. To celebrate, they're extending their anniversary giveaway, now offering $10,000 worth of durable wire shelving, rivet shelving, or Unirack pallet racking to one Michigan business. Visit Shelving.com to apply by November 13th. That's Shelving.com. We rack your world. We have a disabled vehicle on I-94 eastbound at Vision Road. Expect delays on M59 eastbound between Mound and Van Dyke. Construction slows you down. The northbound Southfield Freeway between Oakwood Boulevard and Michigan Avenue. And it looks like we have some slow traffic on I-94 eastbound between I-75 and Gratiot Avenue. Now, WJR Weather First from the Weather Channel. Here's your forecast.
Temperatures remain below average here as we head through the week. Cloudy skies out here this afternoon. Slight chance of showers into this evening. Highs upper 40s to near 50 degrees. Cloudy overnight, mid-30s. Cloudy tomorrow, mid-upper 40s. Sunny and low 50s Wednesday. From the Weather Channel, I'm meteorologist Ken Boone on News Talk 760 WJR.
All right, good enough. Welcome back, everybody. Oh, wait a minute. Now Mike has jumbled you all up. You're all in different windows.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see if I can. The problem is I don't know where everyone was before, so.
Now, we had our Brady Bunch window set. I knew who Bobby was. I knew who,
Guy, I'm going to need you to dig deep down inside yourself and just find them whatever.
All right.
Whatever
I'll
order they're in.
I'll do my best. Thank goodness we got names on all of them.
Yeah.
Have you detected, and we're going to be talking about this, and I don't want to leave the interview in the locker room, but have you guys detected, because you're not on campus, either on social media or virtually, a different vibe politically in the university culture this time around? Because you were on campus 4 years ago, either at Wayne or somewhere else, I assume. So this is your second presidential election. Is there a different vibe to it?
I think that Dr. Corvino was speaking about the interactions on social media being a little bit more heavy than when you're in person. And I think that right now, with everybody being virtual, you can't pick up on all of those nuances that Dr. Corvino mentioned. And I led the college Republicans at GW now 6 years ago. And it was really easy to have civil discourse with the college Dems. I don't know how that happens today.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because I was talking to undergrads back in my street reporting days when I was at Channel 4. And, there was just this general ennui there. Nobody was very excited about Hillary. There wasn't much excitement amongst the young Republicans at the time. If they were establishment Republicans about Donald Trump, I think everybody was a little bit fearful. It was really an interesting time, but there just wasn't any excitement. And you could kind of sense even then that maybe Hillary Clinton was going to have some problems. So I want to get into that with your folks. And just also that when you are learning in a place not your home, how difficult it is to vote. There are a lot of, I saw an a round table that was on online with a guy from Massachusetts. He was actually a Michigan guy studying in Massachusetts who said, I requested my absentee ballot 6 weeks ago, and I still haven't gotten it. Now, he says, I do have 5 siblings at home. It's possible that they lost it when it arrived. But he said, my mom was supposed to forward this to me. This was supposed to happen easily, and it hasn't. And so that there are barriers to voting when you're in a university setting.
I think I'll chime in here and say that, I certainly hope something like that is an anomaly, that the absentee ballots are showing up, people who are voting by mail are in fact getting their ballots, because, I've kind of found as a student, and even this year, it really wasn't that hard to vote. You kind of go online, register, that didn't take very long. And, whether you want to vote by mail, get your absentee ballot, or go to the precinct, it kind of is doable. So I think maybe, college age people just need to kind of take that extra step and kind of go out of their way a little bit to get involved in, the political system of our country.
Have all 4 of you voted already?
I have not yet. I'm registered.
You're registered and ready to go, but 3 out of 4 of you have.
No, I'm voting on election day.
Okay.
Back in 10 here.
All right, good enough.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just going back to the point you made about the enthusiasm, for our young voters.
Hold that thought, JJ. I'll come to you as soon as I got to do a quick setup here. Welcome back, everybody. We're joined by our 4 Wayne State University Law School students. We've got 2 that are involved in the Federalist Society on campus. One that is a third-year law student and native Detroiter. And Allison Putt is with the American Civil Liberties Union chapter on campus. So nice politically diverse group and diverse otherwise as well. I wanted to ask you, and JJ, I wanted to start with you on this. Interesting, 1 in 10 eligible voters is between the ages of 18 and 23. In 2016, only 7,500 of them in Michigan voted early. Right now, we've had 145,000, 5 times more, vote early this time around. Have you sensed a different vibe on campus, or at least virtually on social media, in terms of your connection to the campus this year than 4 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that now there is a lot of enthusiasm for political change. There's a lot of yearning for political change. We're in a very unique political moment in terms of injustice, in terms of COVID-19, the pandemic, and how the president has been handling that. But I would like to say that one of the things that we have to deal with is the cynicism in young voters and the questions regarding if their vote really matters. And we have to ask that question of what can we do to remedy the past discrimination that this cynicism has arisen out of. And I think that is one of the reasons we saw the low turnout in 2016.
There has been an ongoing narrative, JJ, that young Black Americans have pretty low enthusiasm for Joe Biden. 78-year-old candidate, also has some troubling history with the 94 crime bill. Do you sense that, or are folks able to get past that?
I mean, I sense the low enthusiasm, but I think that folks will definitely be able to get past it because I think this election is turning out to be similar to 2016, where there's sort of a referendum on Trump, and it's sort of who's the best choice for the party and for our community. But also, whoever's in the White House, we're going to have to hold them accountable, whether it's Joe Biden or not.
I couldn't agree more, and certainly from a media standpoint, that's true. Max, on the other side of things, do you sense enthusiasm, and have you seen actual growth in young Republicans, young conservatives on campus? And do they feel comfortable being more vocal?
Yeah, I think that's something that's, certainly hard to say, especially this election cycle, given that, students are by and large not on campus. But, I think there's definitely the same enthusiasm issue on the Republican side for younger voters. They're not overly enthused with the candidate, maybe not crazy about every single policy. Some of the character issues, I think, are giving a lot of people pause. And, I think it certainly is going to be some, there is some enthusiasm gap on both sides.
Will, is it harder to have a civil conversation when most of it's a civil political conversation, certainly wherever we go, it seems, but in a university setting where everybody's more or less on social media now because it's a virtual learning environment, is it more difficult to intersect with your Democratic friends and have a civil discussion?
I think it definitely is, and I think that Dr. Corvino made some great points earlier in your program about social media debates losing some of the nuance that you get face-to-face. And when I led the college Republicans at George Washington University, we routinely held debates and conversations with the college Dems, and they went off without a hitch. I don't know that you can do the same thing in a virtual environment when you can't see the emotion of somebody else. You can't figure out when you can't figure out when somebody is being emotional and when they're being just purely fact-based and they don't know your side of the story.
Yeah, they can't see you smile when you're having a civil discussion, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that all the nonverbal cues are gone. Allison, in terms of if you're in contact with young progressives, are they enthused about this ticket? And again, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump, it's going to be the oldest president we've ever had. Can they identify with this person? Do they have confidence? And do they think they're being heard, that their issues are front and center?
Well, so to begin with, I want to acknowledge that's a huge question. And the very first thing you asked is, are young people enthused? And the answer is no, they're not. They see political, the both candidates, they're old, they appear to be out of touch, and they're not representing some of the shift that you see in young people who are looking at their communities. They're looking at the future for the planet. They're looking at high student loan debt. They're looking to barriers to jobs. And that's all incredibly discouraging. And they're not really hearing a lot of positive coming out of either side of the ticket. Mm-hmm. I think at the same time, though, you have to be willing to sit there and criticize with the hope of improving your candidate. So if we're not willing to sit back and say, Joe Biden messed up in 94, and to his credit, he has in the past said that was a mistake. And so if we're not willing as an American public to sit here and say, this person who is supposed to represent me does not fulfill my standards, that's a problem on us as well. So if we're dissatisfied, we need to voice it. And then we need the candidates and the representatives to sit back and reflect and make those improvements.
Yeah, I don't know that that's age specific. I mean, I have heard from a number of people and some callers. We've got callers that love Donald Trump and are very passionate about him. I've heard from people saying, geez, is this the best that we can do as Americans? Max and Will, as you look at this in the closing, we hear them doing their closing arguments. I mean, we've been told that the Republican Party is the party of grumpy old men. Neither one of you look grumpy, and you certainly don't look old. What is lacking in this race from your standpoint? Is Donald Trump hitting on the issues that are important to you, or have you detected that there's far too much negativity, as Allison has pointed out?
I think that as far as the economy goes and as far as COVID goes, it would have been nice to see President Trump take it, I don't want to say more seriously, but take a more measured tone earlier in the crisis, earlier in the pandemic than he did. That said, I think that when we come out of this, the economy is going to be the number one issue. And I think that you've got a lot of young voters today who weren't alive when Al-Qaeda attacked the Twin Towers and who probably weren't eating solid food when we invaded Iraq. So right. the mindset of the new voter is totally different than what we've seen before.
It is, and it's as you say, it's also hard to relate just from the standpoint that these are two individuals that haven't shared your experience either with seeing COVID from a younger perspective, seeing this economy and now how tenuous it is from a younger perspective. Want to rejoin both of you in just a moment. We have to take a short break here. When we come back in the 4:35 hour, we'll get to the notion of free speech on campus and whether or not you're endangered if you engage in it. We'll talk to our roundtable about that. They're doing a great job, and we appreciate them being here. Let's check in with Rich Lazinski, WJR Traffic First. And Jerry Franks, I did see your comment. I wasn't ignoring it. It just didn't quite fit with where we were, and I think that's a really good question. And actually, I'm going to telegraph it to our roundtable. Jerry, this is the best part of getting the texts and stuff in. We can give you a little time to think of it. As law students, do you feel that the Constitution should be a core requirement for undergrads? Just chew on that for a moment. And then Allison, I'll come to you first, but I don't want to leave the spontaneity in the here. So let's. Where did all of you? I know one of you went to U of M. Which that's you, Max? Okay, because I want to also tap into this notion. We've seen some conservative speakers literally almost run off campus at U of M, and I know that they're struggling with this hate speech versus free speech thing. And by the way, the conversation I had with Dr. Corvino, radio being what it is, We see turnover, almost complete turnover every 10 minutes or so. So don't be afraid to say something that Dr. Corvino already said, because chances are it's an entirely new audience who didn't hear him. So, yeah, if you want to make a point that he's already made, by all means, feel free to do it, because we've got a lot of new listeners in. Yeah, Alice and I appreciate your honesty, and I get this sense, and it's weird. Now, I was with Max and Will when I was an undergrad. I mean, this is how long ago this was. It was Ronald Reagan versus Jimmy Carter. It was hard at first to get enthused about either one of them, because Reagan just seemed like such a fossil, right? Until you heard his optimism and, the old Morning in America speech he gave. And that's something to me that seems to be really lacking in this environment. I mean, I wanted to be more optimistic when I was a college student, and now I sound like I should put my teeth in. But, I mean, we had 18% inflation. So the money in my pocket every year was 20 cents worth less, 20 cents less than it was the year before. So spring break cost 20% more, and everything else. And we also had incredibly high interest rates. So if I wanted to get a loan, the prime rate was around 15%. I mean, it was almost illegal now to look at. So you can think of how dark it was at that time, knowing that I was coming out of college into that kind of environment, and I wasn't hearing an optimistic tone. I wasn't hearing from these guys, and I wonder if you kind of feel the same way, that there's just this pessimism that we're wallowing in.
Well, can I jump right in?
Yeah, please do. And again, some folks are watching this and some folks aren't, but by all means, be candid.
So I can't speak for everyone else on this panel, but I have a feeling I may be on the older end. And by that, I mean, I very clearly remember the terrorist attacks. I was in 7th grade when 9/11 occurred. And so I was in that generation that essentially my first sort of idea that there are bad people in the world was the terrorist attacks. And so this has been a huge effect on my life, because at the same time, 8 years later, I'm in college and the Great Recession hits. And I'm looking at, okay, there's bad people out here who want to get Americans, or that's what we're told. And also, I can't get a job when I graduate, because and to grow up through that is sort of, it lends a very pessimistic outlook in general. So,
well, and we're not even talking about things like climate change, which your generation takes much more seriously than mine, and sees as a much more existential threat. I'm interested in terms of Will and Max's standpoint on that, especially. I had to laugh. I mean, I come from the energy field. My parents were originally in the oil business, and we drilled wells here in Michigan. So I felt very acutely this notion of Joe Biden wanting to end fracking. But at the same time, when President Trump comes out and he says, well, windmills kill birds and the power is intermittent, you look at a guy and you go, could he be more out of touch on renewable energy when he's reciting 15-year-old talking points? How does that resonate with you guys? Because I wonder if your climate change views are different than maybe older Republicans.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, Guy. And I think, your instinct is kind of what mine is. Like, when you hear climate change, you kind of think energy and, what are we going to do if we are going to do something like ban fracking or get rid of oil? I mean, we need to be able to not have gas at $5 a gallon, and for people to be able to heat their homes and heat their food. So, things like that are kind of where I go as well. And, like you're saying, climate change is here. I mean, we're, as a younger generation, I think everybody is concerned with it. And I think the next question is, what are we going to do about it? Where, people on my end are probably thinking, we do not like the idea of a Green New Deal, extended government control, more extensive than ever, and would prefer, a more bipartisan and sustainable policy that, does take some of these other considerations into account, like energy, like renewables, nuclear energy, and, things along those lines.
Well, and I think that becomes the problem, Allison and JJ, is that the Green New Deal, especially the cover letter that came out with it when at the same time, was so, from my perspective, so far out and so ridiculous in some of the things that it said that it really undermined the climate change part that I could sign on to, which was we need to take this more seriously. And yeah, we need to make a transition, but it needs to be an orderly one. And I think that was kind of lost. Do you feel kind of let down by maybe some of the more extremist Green New Deal, the AOCs and the way that was presented originally? It was an ugly rollout as a policy.
Do you want to jump in, JJ? I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, I think that we have to have that radical or that extreme push just to start off with, just to set the floor so that we can start talking about more radical ideas and imagining alternatives to what we have now or the world that we live in now. So, I wasn't thrown off or taken aback by it, but I think that, we can negotiate it, we can talk about it, but I think that like AOC, for example, she sets the floor for how sort of radical you want to be.
Okay. I think that Mike's going to weigh in here in a moment, and so I think we're about 30 seconds away from going back into the show, so I want to pause it for just a second. I'm sorry, Allison.
No, that's fine.
We'll have another break, and we can dive back into it, but I knew Mike was going to be punching back in here.
Yeah, we're about 50 seconds away here, so.
Oh, okay, I'm off by 20. There you go.
Yeah, well, you're going by feel. And you know what? I'll give you audio this time as you're coming back.
What a great idea.
I was sitting there like, what the heck's he doing? I'm like, oh, he can't hear a thing.
But
and then that's why you saw me going like this, like hoping you'd pick up on it.
But we did enjoy the Thin Lizzy cut. Thanks very much.
Yeah,
These guys don't even know who Thin Lizzy is.
We're the best variety of yesterday and today here at WJR.
I was raised by a good man, so I do.
Okay, good. So the boys are back in town. You good.
All right, guys, 10 seconds.
All right. Appreciation for the oldies.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome back to more Guy Gordon on WJR. Today, Guy is sponsored by Wayne State University. Once again on his 2020 college tour, here's Guy.
And we are virtual. You can check us out on WJR's Facebook page if you want to see as well as hear our best and brightest that are making up our roundtable here. To reintroduce them, Max Shewart and Will Broman are both in the Wayne State University School of Law. They're also members of the Federalist Society. Allison Putt, also a law school student at Wayne State. And JJ, James Johnson, is a third-year law student, and we're lucky to have them both. I wanted to ask you, just off the top, and I'm going to run around the table here, what is the top two issues that each of you have, and are they being addressed to your satisfaction? And Max, we're going to go clockwise here. I'll start with you.
Yes, I think naturally, the biggest issue is the economy and the future of the economy. And, to answer your question directly, I don't necessarily think these questions are being answered in a way you want. We heard JJ earlier mention this election has simply turned into a referendum on President Trump. And, I would certainly like to see more substance in a lot of these answers and learn more about where the candidates want to take the country the next 4 years, as opposed to what has been happening, recent events or in the past for that matter. So, I think the economy is certainly number one on everyone's list. We're students entering a job market soon. Everybody else is already in this job market. And, I think that is going to be the primary concern of voters, as it has been historically.
Actually, it was interesting because there was the American Enterprise Institute tried to do a review of both of candidates' economic plans. And actually, when you go on President Trump's website, there is no 4-year plan for the next 4 years. They couldn't do the analysis. Are you frustrated that his plan is basically, you don't want what the other guys are bringing, but hasn't really given us a vision for what he's going to do in the next 4 years? Is that troubling? Briefly?
I think, yes, certainly is troubling. You would like to just know more details about what you're voting for, what the candidate you are, seeking to elect is going to do when in office. So, you can always just assume Republican president, tax cuts, but there certainly is a lot of other questions that I think people, would like to have answered.
Yeah, he's promised a middle-class tax cut, and yet the size of it is somewhat nonspecific. Allison, same question to you. Top issue, and is it being addressed to your satisfaction?
So my top issue is systemic racial injustice. And the reason for that is because it affects every single part of our lives. So Max had mentioned the economy. If we remedy systemic racial injustice, what that's going to mean is higher salaries and better paying jobs for minority people in this country. What that means is there's more money in the economy. So fixing racial injustice is good for everyone. And I mean, if you think about it in other ways as well, it affects healthcare, it affects the housing market, all of these trickle down things.
Well, Allison, let me give you a little pushback on this, because I'm not sure where your horse is and where the cart is, because I would argue that in the past 2 years, if it's one thing we've seen, if you have a good economy, that fixes a lot of what is wrong. We saw historic lows for African American and Latino unemployment, and we saw the inequality gap in terms of income close. Isn't that a remedy that fixes the problem?
So what?
I mean, I would suggest that a good economy shows that we can lift everybody without necessarily focusing exclusively on systemic racism.
So are you talking about just the past 2 years?
Well, the past 4 years. I mean, that in general, that a good economy serves all and it lifts all boats, which seems to indicate that maybe it's not systemic racism. It can be that truly, when the economy is bad, it falls harder perhaps on minorities and the disadvantaged. But if we cure that, we cure a lot of those inequities.
So when times are good, they're good for everyone, right? So that's not when you see the problems in the system. It's when times are bad. So I would say that, the fact that in a downturn, you see minorities getting hit worse. You see women dropping out of the workforce, especially right now. Minorities are hit worse. Women are hit worse. They're dropping out of the workforce because daycare facilities are closing. So women have to put their careers on hold and go take care of the children.
Understood.
So I think the metrics need to be different, is what I'm saying.
JJ and Will, I've got 45 seconds for each of you. James, your number one issue and whether or not it's being addressed.
I'd say definitely healthcare and racism, just in terms of racism in the healthcare system, and also just we need to find ways to give the message that we put people's lives before the private insurance market.
All right, JJ, thank you. And Will, you're going to wrap it up here for this segment. You think that your major issue is being addressed, and what would it be?
My major issue is bringing back more American manufacturing jobs and increasing the acceptance of jobs in the skilled trades. And I'm not sure that either one is adequately addressing it right now. I think that President Trump is probably addressing the manufacturing issue a bit more than Joe Biden it will be.
And actually, the skilled trades issue seems to be a big one here in the state of Michigan. And I think we're doing a better job of addressing that here in the mitten than they are nationally. And thank goodness for that, because that's one issue where I think both Democrats and Republicans realize that we need to upskill folks in this state. We will continue the conversation on our Facebook page. We will be back to wrap things up. And again, we'll be talking about free speech versus what some call hate speech. Next on The Guy Gordon Show, here's Rich Lazinski. So, Will, to that end, because the one thing that has been of real interest to me with Donald Trump, and the one thing that has really rubbed me raw, is the notion of the trade war with China, and the idea that trade wars are easily won and that tariffs are paid by the other guy. Does that run afoul of your principles as well, or do you accept that as an acceptable path to get a better trade relationship with the Chinese?
I don't think that the trade war is truly effective from a public policy standpoint. I think from a negotiation standpoint, it might be, but this is a case where the principles that work well in business may not work so well in the public policy arena. And I think that you're seeing the farmers in Michigan and around the country really getting hit hard by the trade war. I mean, soybean prices are at $10 now, and you look back 4 years ago, and they were very high, almost $14 a bushel when President Obama was in office. And so, but President Trump makes a really good pitch to the heartland, and I think that the trade war is kind of confusing a lot of people in that respect.
Well, I don't think anybody would doubt that we're getting killed in terms of intellectual property, in terms of currency manipulation, in terms of tech transfers, forced tech transfers, just to do business in China. And we've got to do something about it, but more taxes. And I don't know that a lot of Republicans that I talk with on my show are as sensitive to that. They kind of will go along because President Trump has endorsed it. But they've never met a tax they've ever liked, and yet this is one that they somehow will endorse. Max, do you agree, or you've got a different viewpoint?
I wanted to chime in, actually. I think this is a very interesting topic, and I think at the end of the day, taking on China is going to be President Trump's legacy, win or lose in this election. That relationship needed changes, and, to Will's point of trying to bring American manufacturing jobs home, whether that ends up successful or not, I think that, the trade war is frankly just an excuse for like a geopolitical rift between the two countries. We have a rising power in China. It's set to overtake the U.S. as the largest economy in the next, I believe, 10 years or so. And, I think frankly that something needed to be done about that. China is a bad actor. I mean, a terrible human rights track record, currency manipulation, as you mentioned. They do what's good for China and not for the world. And I think President Trump has, definitely had some good policies in that regard.
Yeah. Allison and JJ, it was unfortunate, but it was about 8 or 9 months ago that Joe Biden, speaking to one group, says China's not our enemy. We've got this. It's not a big. Do you think that this whole mess with Hunter and his laptop aside, do you think that he understands the threat that China poses? Because he certainly didn't articulate that very well earlier last winter. Allison or JJ?
Sure. So, sorry, I was waiting to see if JJ was going to jump in first. So I'd be interested a little bit more in knowing exactly what context Biden made that, that remark. But I have a hard time believing that someone who has been in Congress so long and the White House for as long as he doesn't have an idea of the like what China does in the foreign. So to me it sounds like a misstatement. I am not as educated perhaps on his China policy, on Joe Biden's China policy. So, and I hesitate to make comments on things I'm not informed on.
Well, the one thing that he has said, and I agree with it, is, President Trump's, one of his great legacies is he believes that bilateral agreements can be made with everybody, and we don't need to join up with anybody. By putting America first, we can go it alone. Because he feels that when you form alliances, that you end up having a watered-down policy. And I don't necessarily disagree, and I think he's done some good things with NATO. But in terms of China, what Biden's talking about is getting back into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, where you get all the trading partners together and you speak with a unified voice to China. I'm not sure that wouldn't be a better way than taxing the American consumer.
We're back in 20 here, by the way, so.
Is that Ray Templin behind you?
Yeah.
Tell him I said hello.
The stories that have been breaking while you've been at work. 760 WJR, where Detroit comes to talk.
There was a recent campus survey, and it was interesting in almost its unanimity that whether the students questioned were liberal, moderate, or conservative, over 70% said they did not feel comfortable expressing their political viewpoint in a politically mixed group for fear of retribution or some political shaming. I'm wondering to what degree that exists with our 4 roundtable participants here. So we're rejoined by Max, Will, JJ, and Allison. JJ, I want to start with you. I mean, I think conservatives felt a little bit more abused than liberals, but everybody felt like this is not a healthy environment for political expression on college campuses.
I think, there's a difference between political expression or just expressing your opinion about a debatable topic versus speech that's just plainly disruptive or plainly offensive, or because, the school is the speakers that the school brings to campus is a reflection of the school. It's more than just about the curriculum and the books and the education, but the school has to lead by example. And I think that we have to draw the line somewhere in terms of when is speech impermissible and when is it debatable. But I also want to just point out that I think that the call out culture is a little bit toxic because we're supposed to be students and we're supposed to be in a learning environment and dealing with these real world issues, people with different viewpoints, and we should be calling people in to discuss, our differences rather than shaming them or calling them out, unless the speech that they're expressing is just plainly offensive or plainly disruptive to the college environment.
I want to go to Allison because of her involvement with the ACLU. My friends at the ACLU have always been very righteous about First Amendment rights, and yet I have almost seen this kind of evolve on their point. What's offensive to some is enlightening to others. If we're going to err on one side or the other, wouldn't we want to err on maybe a freer expression? And so why does it seem that we keep tripping over this?
So I think I was listening this weekend to a radio show called Hidden Brain, and the topic was actually very pertinent to this discussion in particular. And the topic was moral opinions and how we react to those when we have them and how they're expressed. So the basic idea is that when we have a moral opinion about something, we think that we're right in the same way that we know that 2 + 2 = 4. And so so to us, it appears to be an objectively definable fact, and it's also objectively obvious to everyone around us. And so therefore, we're also way more offended and, aghast when other people don't see things the same way as we do. And the reason I bring that up is because I think politics have become a lot more moralized in the last 10 to 15 years. So we see things not as items of political discourse, but as core moral values. And therefore, your political belief being different than mine represents a moral gulf between the two of us. And go ahead.
No, that is a fascinating perspective, is that we seem to almost think that because we're so enlightened that we have the moral high ground, instead of choosing the path of saying, well, maybe I shouldn't be quite so self-righteous. Will or Max, have you experienced this? And I want to ask you the same question that I asked John Corvino, and that is, are we in a situation now where a very vocal and loud minority is silencing speech that most of you would agree is enlightening, and 2/3 of the campus in a recent survey said, no, we want these controversial topics, and yet we see them being shut down. So is the minority driving the conversation here?
I think it absolutely is. And I think that you have a lot of people who understand that you don't have to get unnecessarily offended at anything. Similarly, you don't have to be unnecessarily insensitive toward others when you're making an argument or having a discussion. And at the same time, I think that political persuasions right now tend to give others a first impression of you and of everything that you stand for without really discussing it with you. And in the social media environment that we're in the remote and virtual environment that we're in, the slightest comment or the slightest indication that you might lean one way or another can have profound effects and misunderstandings in an email.
Yeah.
And it will torpedo from there.
Max, how do we fix it?
That's an actually good question, Guy. And, I'd be kind of interested in what the takes are, but I think the fact is that, regulations on speech is something that just does not work. You don't want to see voices shouted down. I think we should kind of move to just a simple, marketplace of ideas where the best ones are going to win out. We'll hear everyone out and people will make up their minds about, what speech they want to hear and what they don't. which I think frankly sends a much stronger message than, shouting down a speaker or doing something like that. Prove them wrong if you truly disagree with their thoughts.
And the same question to you, JJ. How do we start to both desensitize ourselves so that we're not so quick to anger, or quick, as Allison said, and I think she's very insightful, to make a moral judgment about the person that we're speaking with? How do we fix that?
I'll say that I think it was way worse in 2016 when Trump first got elected, because he was talking about immigration bans, and he was talking about things that were fundamentally opposed to people's humanity, and so that's why people were so up in arms about it. But I think that it's getting better now. I think that people are becoming more willing to communicate with one another. And honestly, I'm not sure how we solve the issue, but I think it starts with just, instead of calling people out or shaming them, just tell them that they're wrong. Like Max said, I mean, I agree with that. Tell them that they're wrong. Tell them that, this is not something that we can really, that this is not a point that you can make right now, because it's not true.
And Allison, to some degree, is it also because so often, instead of explaining ourselves or listening, the art of listening has become kind of a lost art, but also it kind of degrades into name calling. If you express a support for maybe a more radical climate change policy, then you're a socialist. Or, and on the other side, if someone says they're not for affirmative action, well, they're a racist. How do we put an end to the labeling?
Well,
because I think that's what's driving us apart. I think that's part of the cancel culture, is that you're going to get tagged.
So I do think that calling people names, it's not helpful. And I have actually, I have blocked people who are ostensibly progressive from my own social media, who express that progressiveness in a way that's not respectful, because I don't care if I agree with you, or if you're going to be a jerk about it, I have no interest. But I do think that the idea of calling someone a racist being a super harmful behavior, which objectively we know that racism is harmful, it's degrading, it's offensive, and equating socialism with that sort of behavior, I think, is problematic.
Right. I got to tell you, you're so right, and part of it is we have to be willing to do the policing within our own political group. Too often we've been given the seal of approval to that, or silence as being our only response. Thanks to all four of you. Continued success in your academic careers, continued success in your legal careers. Whatever you do with that sheepskin, we wish you well. You are great representatives of Wayne State and Wayne State law.
Thanks, Guy.
Thank you.
Thanks to the four of you. And thank you for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow live from Grand Valley State University on the Allendale campus. We hope you'll join us then for more of these discussions. In the meantime, this is Guy Gordon. Have a great day. Rich Lazinski, WJR Traffic First. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate it.
That was great, guys. Just terrific work. Thanks very much. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Have a good day. We just sign off here?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right, Guy. We're done.
That was wonderful. Those kids were great. They're not kids, but they're great.